Mel works for PRP Environmental and is licensed in everything that I possibly could know about, and you know much more than I do. Green, LEED, you name it, she's done it. She's got an excellent understanding of buildings and physics and an extensive knowledge of policy in related areas. I'm not reading the whole thing out, okay? So I'm going to let Mel introduce herself. We are 10 minutes late, so see how well you can keep to time, Mel.
Thank you. Hopefully you can all hear me. I shall try and speak loudly. Okay, I'm getting nods from the back, that's good. I'm going old school today. I have no slides. I only have my little card, so you're going to actually have to listen to me rather than read the screen. I'm delighted to be asked to speak today at Green Vision. I studied in Leeds. I lived and worked in Leeds for a very long time. I'm now based in London at PRP Architects within the environmental department. Looking forward to the rest of the afternoon and all the round tables, and especially the Living Building Challenge. Interested to hear more about that. But for the next 10 minutes or so, I'm hoping to set the scene and explore a little bit more about green vision, corporate social responsibility in the specific context of buildings. So, I'll start and look at corporate social responsibility, what that is, what it's useful for, have a look at a couple of heroes of mine. I'm going to add to your homework list and give you the names of 2 more books, so you'll be well read by the end of today. And then I'm going to translate that into buildings, both into the design and into the operations. So, what is CSR useful for? Now, in my opinion, CSR is primarily all about communications. It's a way of companies specifically communicating their visions, their ethics, their way of believing in things, both internally and externally. It's making things explicit that previously may just have been implicit. And with that comes a risk. Once you start writing things down and committing to things, you're opening yourself up to debate. I think it's the best way to say that. Of course, CSR has got its critics. It can be criticised as being a method of greenwashing, and by starting to be explicit and writing things down, perhaps you are trying to hide something. I'll come back to this in the context of buildings later on, but it's worth being aware that CSR can be seen as a criticism. In an ideal world, CSR would be a redundant concept, and as a sustainability consultant, my goal in life is to make myself redundant. Hopefully we'll all get to that point where you won't need a sustainability consultant. Okay. So, where do buildings fit into CSR? Depending on any business, buildings can account for either the second or the third largest expenditure, and that's behind staff and operations. Now, I'm going to talk about 2 CSR heroes of mine that come from the world of making widgets. In that world of people who make things, who actually create things rather than employing knowledge workers, buildings have got less of an importance. And I think we have seen CSR come through from those companies that make things because they've got a greater scope to change things. So I'll move on to the 2 guys I want to talk about. The first one, and I know some people in the room in particular also have this guy as their hero, is Yvon Chouinard of Patagonia. Patagonia make outdoor clothes. He him at CSR from a passion and an authenticity, that passion shows his authenticity there. It was a behaviour change that he was trying to instill in his little world of rock climbing. He wanted rock climbing that was clean climbing. It wasn't going to affect the environment. He wanted people to be able to do what they wanted to do, which is an important point here. He wasn't telling people not to do something. Don't climb on the rocks, you're going to destroy them. Here's a way of climbing on the rocks that will protect them. So, he, after setting up the company, his philosophy is very much being transparency. For instance, they disclose all the chemicals that they use. They do a lot of recycling of materials and that. I'll just read out his 5 principles for his environmental credo. Number 1, lead an examined life. Number 2, clean up our own act. Number 3, do our penance. Number 4, support civil democracy. And number 5, influence other companies. Very much his influence there is the transparency and passion behind what he does. My next hero is Ray Anderson. Unfortunately passed away recently, of Interface, still are a very successful carpet tile company, which sounds an unlikely place to get a hero from. But his book, The Confessions of a Radical Industrialist, is a fantastic read. I'll just give a quote from the beginning of the book, which I think a lot of people, especially in the construction industry, can learn from. The trouble was, other than obeying the law, I did not have an environmental vision. I knew complying was not a vision. Now, in the context of UK, where we have got some of the most stringent environmental requirements for buildings, especially looking at Part L on new build, that's something worth remembering. Just complying is probably not enough. His epiphany came when he read another book by Hawkins, where he realised that he could do more, and he had a massive influence over his own company. So his credo was, take nothing, do no harm. And a fantastic example of how to embed sustainability into a business model and make it work for them. And sustainability does not mean that you're not making money. They definitely make money doing it. So, I'm sorry, I forgot the book on Yvonne Chouinard. Let My People Go Surfing, also an excellent book, really good. Okay, so what do both of these characters have in common? It's their ability to clearly communicate. They're very good at putting forward their vision, and they put it forward in an authentic, transparent and accountable manner. So what can we learn from these kinds of people who've been there and done it before in buildings? What are the lessons that we can learn, and how can we start to better communicate? So this is a card of cliches. So what's measured can be managed. We've all heard that. Once you've measured it, you can then report it. And reporting it is communicating it. And that is basically where green buildings has got to. So let me look at this in a little bit more detail. We've got 2 aspects here, both the design of buildings and the operation of buildings. And the key message here is that things need to be measurable, accountable, repeatable. So I'll move on to my expertise is BREEAM. For those who don't know BREEAM, it is the Building Research Establishment Environmental Assessment Method. And everybody looks as if they have come across BREEAM. There's three reasons that you would do BREEAM at a planning, at a design stage, and that is planning, funding, or client desire. I'm not going to touch on planning and funding today. Being forced to do something for reasons other than client desire is a whole other kettle of fish. So let's look at the client desire. Why would you want to have a BREEAM building? It's a way of demonstrating externally and also internally to the people that work for you. If you have, we're looking here mainly at offices, so it's knowledge workers. So demonstrating to those who work for you and externally your credentials. But also in the design process, it's a way of managing outcomes. It's a kind of shorthand for saying to your contractors and to your design team, I want a sustainable building. I don't know enough about it. As a client, I don't know enough about buildings to tell you exactly every single thing that I need to know, or that you need to do, but BREEAM is the package that we currently say, here's a sustainable building. I'm not going to touch on whether that is true or not, but that's where we are in the market today. So, if you go for a BREEAM excellent rating, BRE currently say that you are within the top 10% of buildings. Outstanding is less than 1%. A few more statistics here. Around about 6% of the new stock, this was a 2009 figure, around about 6% of new stock is BREEAM certified. And in total, from June 2011, I've got a figure of 5.8 million metres squared of UK office space, which was BREEAM certified. Okay. BREEAM is also a very useful tool within design teams to encourage collaboration. And I've got another book here, Charles Ledbetter in We Think. Said of Wikipedia that it starts to teach the habits of participation, responsibility and sharing. Right, it may be a leap to some people, but I do think that LEED and BREEAM do this. So when you're sitting in a design team, having a meeting about BREEAM, pretend to be all the members of the design team, which takes you out of the silo mentality, leads to better collaboration, and educates team members about things that they don't necessarily know. Okay. I'll move on to the operations side of things. It's all very well designing your building to BREEAM, or whatever other scheme that you might want to go for. But we're very aware at the minute, and I know Leeds Met in particular have done a lot of work on this, in the design performance gap. Now, part of that design performance gap is a compliance design gap, in that the tools currently, especially BREEAM, is based on compliance tools for building regulations, and that is your baseline. And it goes back to looking at things being repeatable and accountable, and how can you have a baseline between two very different buildings. You bring it back to building regs, and there's where your baseline starts. This causes all kinds of problems then when you start to actually move into the building and operate it. So there is a gap there. Right. So what tools do we have in the performance side of things to measure how we're doing on green buildings, or any building? The first one I'm going to talk about is POE, or, oh, I've got a complete mind freeze there. POE.
Post-occupancy.
Post-occupancy evaluation. Sorry about that. That's what I get for writing my alphabet soup down and not writing it out in full to myself. So POE is all about the occupant, and it's a very well researched way of evaluating the occupants once they've moved into a building. There's rewards for it in various green building ratings. Now, much of what POE looks at is comfort. Now, comfort in itself has some interesting issues in that it's hard to quantify an absence of discomfort. It's very easy to complain about being too hot, too cold, but it's very hard to quantify, yeah, I'm all right. Nobody kind of goes, oh, I feel perfectly well today. You can feel cozy if you're tucked up by a fire or something, but if you're at an office desk, usually you're not aware that you're comfortable. You will be aware that you're uncomfortable. So one of the benefits of monitoring POE is quantifying that lack of complaint, if that makes sense. I wanted also to talk about productivity benefits of green buildings, and there is a relationship there between the occupants and productivity. And things that green buildings are known for, or common attributes of green buildings, are things such as natural ventilation, daylighting, and control over your surroundings. Now, it's more than just a happy coincidence. These attributes tend to make happy people. Happy people tend to be more productive. It's all great. Now, I know other speakers later in the afternoon are talking about building performance evaluation as well as post-occupancy evaluation. And there is a difference there between the POE, which is the person, and the BP, which is the building. And the building performance evaluation is very much centred around making sure that what you've ended up with is what you wanted to get in the first place. And there's tools out there such as BISRIA soft landings, which will help ensure that what you get, that what you've specified is what you end up getting. If you can crack your building performance evaluation, it's much more likely that your post-occupancy evaluation will go well as well. But if you have a poor building, it's unlikely that your occupants will be happy. So what tools are there out there to have in operation? In the UK, we don't have we do have a few tools at the minute, but they're not frequently used. We have BREEAM in use, but it's not as transparent as the BREEAM in design is. So it's very hard to find out what credits they're actually looking for. There's a few competitors on the market, such as Green Rating, which IPD have backed, but that is not third-party accredited. The reason why Green Rating has been set up is because it wasn't felt that the other rating tools out there assessed what was important to the building occupiers. That's the UK market. However, this year for the first time, I don't know if anybody saw the RICS report that came out last month that looks at the green ratings across the whole of Europe. And in that, LEED EBOM, which is existing buildings operations and maintenance in the US, the first time that's taken more assessments than new build. That's very much driven by tax incentives. Now, final couple of points. There is a growing body of research out there that demonstrates that there's value now in green buildings. And I would recommend looking up any paper basically by Niels Koch, who's a Dutch researcher, and he does a lot of work with RICS. So his paper, Valuing Green Buildings, from March 2012 is worth looking up. He's also got a paper, this is where I'm losing my place here. Green buildings, he says, tend to cluster, and this effect of once one person has a green building, other people feed off it. It's very much like there's a well-known effect of PV. When somebody gets PV in an area, it multiplies because people start to see it. Same effect seen with green buildings. The green buildings tend not to change hands. Very much driven by other occupiers, and once you buy it, you hold on to it, which demonstrates its value. But I'll go back to the CSR and greenwash aspect of things. Niels Koch did a paper a couple of years ago on why companies rent green, CSR and the role of real estate. They looked at 11,000 tenants in 1,100 green buildings and 3,900 non-green buildings. This is in the States, so the green buildings were Green Star or LEED buildings. And they found that as well as government-related organisations who maybe had a mandate for occupying green buildings, the most prominent green tenants were oil and banking, which I thought was very interesting. Okay, so just to conclude, there's lessons to be learned from people that have been there before in other fields, and they revolve around communication. Transparency instills trust, and passion reflects authenticity. And above all, green building should be measurable, accountable, and repeatable. I hope I stuck to time.
Thank you. Well, that's fascinating and seems to say exactly what we all know. The tools are out there, so you've got all the mechanisms to do the measuring. It's doing the measuring, repeating the measuring, and making sure everybody's on board with it. So making sure the procurement guys and the FDs know what you're talking about rather than just the energy manager or the CSR person. Okay, I'm going to change the timing slightly because we're just running slightly behind time. There are 4 round tables.